Hey everyone, Nat Richards from Tex on the Move here, and today I've got 3 points for anyone that's asking the question, when am I best off arriving in Australia? So there's no right approach for everyone, of course. Everyone's got their own way of doing things and different ideas on what suits them best, and that's absolutely cool. We like talking about those plans and developing a bit of an idea of what suits you best when you're dealing with Tex on the Move. But here's 3 general pieces of advice that I reckon are probably good to keep in mind for most people. So point number 1, when you're trying to pick a time of year to arrive in Australia, is it's probably best to avoid the big holiday of Christmas and the period around it. So there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is actually homesickness. So when you're arriving in Australia for the first time, whether it's as a working holiday maker perhaps, or even coming on a sponsored visa, even permanent residency if you've gone to that big step, it can be a tough time of year to arrive just before Christmas, because as you're getting into Australia and you're trying to find your way and you're making new friends and figuring it all out for the first time, it's a little bit hurtful to know that your whole family and your friends are back home in your home country celebrating Christmas without you. So ultimately, if you can give yourself a bit of a break to come well in advance of Christmas or arrive afterward, it definitely takes some of that emotional strain away. Point number 2 that I would suggest for anyone thinking about coming to Australia and their timing is to try to very carefully pick the right season for you to arrive in. So it's a bit of an old stereotype for Aussies to talk to people from the other side of the world, particularly if they're coming from the Northern Hemisphere, and say that it is pretty damn hot in Australia. Obvious, right? But at the end of the day, even though it might sound really great to you perhaps to land and spend tons of time on the beach, particularly in a hot part of Australia like Queensland, the reality often bites pretty hard at first. So an Australian summer is normally quite a bit longer and quite a lot hotter than what you would expect in other parts of the world. The humidity in particular as you move further north in this country can be really, really taxing. So it's not just the time that you might spend on the beach or even at home, it's the time you spend at work too. And if you're a motor mechanic, truck mechanic, or even panel beater, something like that, you're probably going to be in some pretty basic facilities where there's not going to be air conditioning. You might get some fans if you're lucky, and the building's probably going to retain some heat. So expecting yourself to prosper immediately getting chucked into a summer can be tough. On the flip side to that, I would suggest that spring or autumn are fantastic times for you to consider coming. The reason for that is because that's fairly ideal weather for most people in most parts of the country. So you get this immediate responsive sort of kick of enjoyment for the whole big trip that you've made down to Australia, and it's rewarding straight away. Point number 3, and the final one for this video, relates more to people who are parents, so those that are bringing kids to Australia. My tip there is to consider the timing of the different terms or semesters that the different schools are going to have. So if you're Northern Hemisphere, you're probably accustomed to having your big yearly holiday with the kids at home through August, and of course that happens in Australia in January. So it's important to try to time your arrival around that as much as you can, or even the intervals of terms beginning along the way throughout the year. It can be a bit smoother for those kiddies to make the transition into an Australian school at particular times of the year where their classes perhaps are not yet so settled and developed, or even the units that they're being taught, which sort of comes down to their age, are not in full swing. So if you can get the kids into schooling at the right time, you'll make it a bit easier on them socially and academically. So I hope that helps. If you've got any questions about when you'd like to arrive in Australia or you want to talk through some issues, please don't hesitate to give us a shout. My name's Nat. You can give me at nat.richards@texonthemove.com.au, or hit us up wherever you're seeing this video on social media or YouTube. Thanks for your time.